This chapter pleases me greatly. The reason for that is because this chapter goes back into what made it so good. What made me fall in love with the Promised Neverland. Now, don't get me wrong. I've loved these recent chapters. They've been very good giving us world building, letting us get introduced to this new character that still doesn't have a name, but he's very shady and has a very unique and interesting personality, and I want to know more about him. And I've loved to see these children actually have some freedom. They no longer are having to worry about getting eaten alive by demons. I mean, it's been really fun. The recent chapters have been very good in terms of progression, character development, all of that. However, I think many can agree with me that the recent chapters have lacked one big thing that many of us probably loved about the series, and that was the psychological aspect of it. The, playing mind games with each other. And that is what the recent chapters have been missing. And finally, with this chapter, we get to see mind games taking place. This reminds me of the first arc of The Promised Neverland, when Emma, Ray, and Norman were having to outsmart, Isabel. They were having to figure out what she was thinking, how to outsmart her, and that's what made me really enjoy the series, how I fell in love with the manga. With this chapter, we get to see an aspect of what makes this manga so good. We see this entire inner monologue going on inside of Emma and Ray's head. They're trying to figure out what's going on or what they need to do and what the man is thinking. But it was revealed that the dude with no name was actually thinking about what they were thinking. So we had once again an aspect of where he was analyzing what they would do and how they felt about him, which was just very fascinating, because that's what I loved about the series. I love seeing how these characters were constantly outsmarting each other. They knew what each other was thinking, and they're figuring out how to work around the person and outsmart them in general, and then win the game of chess. So that's what happened. When you see the man reveal, that's probably what they're thinking and all that. They're probably thinking, I don't want to do so-and-so, or I'm going to do so-and-so, or I want to, have it to where one of them dies accidentally, just watch them die and then get back and all that. Basically, the man was revealed in this chapter that he was just imagining what they were thinking, analyzing them, and that's just an aspect I truly enjoy. I really love that. I cannot express that enough. Anyways, though, let's talk about what is on the table now for the plot, or this arc. Goldie Pond. That is the destination. Now, we no longer just have the area number. We now have the name, Goldie Pond. So if I had to make any type of guess here, I'm going to assume that the base, the shelter, where they're going like A0 or whatever, most likely the shelter is inside of the pond, deep underneath the pond. Like, probably very similar to how the shelter is in the desert, but most likely there's a shelter probably inside of the pond that's like a hatch or something you go down into, and basically you're fine. Something like that. Now, that does depend on how sophisticated demon society is, because for all we know, the demons could have already mapped out the lake, and if they did map out the lake, then there was a possibility that they could have found, like, some form of shelter. So maybe it might not be in there if the demons have very high technology. Now, if they don't, there is a likely possibility they have not discovered it. So it could be somewhere outside of the pond. Regardless, though, I'm very curious on what they're going to do, because from everything that's been established already, there's a couple of things that the children need to avoid when it comes to this world, the demon world. They need to avoid forests. You also need to avoid big bodies of water, which makes a lot of sense in civilization. Let's think about our society for a second, okay? In our society, where do you most likely see civilization at? Towns, people. You see them near forests, and you see them near water. Big bodies of water. For instance, coastal cities on oceans, or big lakes, or rivers, streams. That's usually where you see civilization. And so in this case, it makes a lot of sense that the rules of civilization for, humanity would be applied to here as well for demonkind, because we have to assume that they need water as well. So because of that, them having to avoid bodies of water makes sense. But them going to an area called Goldie Pond, you can only assume that Goldie Pond is most likely near a big like village, city, or whatever for demonkind, unless it's some form of park. Now, that could be a possibility here. We don't know exactly how demonkind is. We don't know how everything works in their political system. We do know that they're not all in one state, one mind. They all have their own viewpoints, so they could have their own, like, setup like how humanity has it, their own parks and stuff to keep wildlife safe. So there is a possibility that Goldie Pond could be like some form of park, and so there might not be any civilization in there. However, though, regardless, I'm going to assume, since it's so dangerous to go over there and all that, I'm going to assume that there's some form of village, town, or whatever next to it, which would be very bad if they're discovered. So it's going to be a horrible journey for them. Like, it's going to be a very hard and horrible journey, because when a demon discovers them, obviously, it's not going to be good. From everything we've seen from a demon, they have way more strength than a regular human, especially a child, and obviously guns would probably work, but like I've already talked about in previous videos, as soon as they fire a gun, it's like sending an alarm bell. Everybody's going to hear the gun, and if they're in the middle of a forest / mountains or whatever, that gun sound is just going to echo. It's going to echo for long miles and all that. People are going to hear it, and then they're going to like, why is there a gun going off? And so if there's any like sort of police in this world, then they're obviously going to investigate it. They're going to investigate where that sound came from, what was that sound or whatever, and then even if they don't think it's a human, if they discover the source of it, they're going to be like, okay, something's going on here. So, just many variables right now, and so, if they get discovered at all, basically, they're dead. They're pretty much dead at that moment. There's just no way, because if society really is as advanced as humanity, then there'll obviously be hunts for these children. I guess there'll be, like, big, county-wide searches for, the children, if they are discovered, which would be very bad, because if there's a lot of demons and all that, to the ratio of, how humanity is, then they'll easily be able to find these children if they just, circle around in a forest or whatever, and slowly search or whatever with hunting dogs or whatever. It wouldn't take that long at all. Anyways, though, getting back into it, let's talk about the character, okay? The man with no name. The man with no name, he, as we can see, he clearly was analyzed properly by Emma. Emma analyzed him in a way to say that he definitely seems like he could kill someone, but it seems like he doesn't necessarily want to do it. He rather try to avoid killing someone. And she even did speculate that most likely he was the type of person, instead of just killing them, he would let something else happen to them and watch it happen. For instance, demons eating them. And so, most likely, Emma is getting the wrong impression here. She obviously is correct about a lot of the things that she's thinking, but she's very naive. And that's one of the big things we have seen about her character. She is very naive. It is a big aspect of her that has been established since the beginning, since the series first came out. And I feel like one of these days that, aspect of her being very naive, is eventually going to come back and, bite her, and she's probably going to have to rid herself of being naive. But for now, though, it seems like Ray is going to be, like, the only source of, like, hope for this, team. Because right now, Ray is very aware that the dude, there's just no time to, like, try to learn who this dude is, learn his name, get to know him and all that. There's no time for that, because this man clearly wants to kill them, and so Ray's like, if I have to do it, I have to do it. I will kill this man, no questions asked. I will put him down. And knowing how Ray is, and seeing what his type of character is, I believe he could actually be capable of doing that. So, I am looking forward to it, seeing if Ray will go that far, and if that would be the fate of this character, if he will be killed off. We'll have to see. Overall, though, I do believe that the latest chapter of The Promised Neverland, was a very good setup, and went back to what established this series to be so good, and why it became so popular in recent time. It's going back to its mind games, its, psychological roots, and that's what I have been missing, honestly, from this series. So, before I end this video, let's talk about something that's a little bit of good news for The Promised Neverland. At the beginning of the chapter with the color page, we get to see that the series has sold over 2 million copies. Now, I know many might not care about this at all, but that's really nice to see. This basically lets us know that The Promised Neverland is doing very well, it's selling well, and that there is a potential possibility that it will get an anime. If it continues down this path and it continues to do good, it's just a matter of time until it gets an anime. It's just a question when. And if I had to assume anything, judging by around when, Boku no Hero Academia got, like a season, I would say there's a very likely possibility we might get an anime announcement this year or sometime early next year. I could definitely see it because I think Boku no Hero got its anime announcement around like the 60s and 70s. Somewhere around in there it got its anime announcement. So when I think about it, there is a possibility that we could be having an anime announcement for The Promised Neverland very soon. And like I said, I'm looking forward to it if it does happen. So I want to end my video there. If you like my content, please subscribe. If you like my video, please leave a like. I love you guys. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.